Hello, welcome to the Westclox Museum.
Hi,
I'm
Ruth. Thank you so much for having us.
I give you a brochure with condensed history, and we have the whole history, so we'll answer all your questions.
Wonderful. And I'm Bianca here at the historic Westclox building, specifically the Westclox Museum. And Ruth, the curator, is here to give us a little bit of a history lesson about the Westclox.
You might be sorry. There's a lot of history.
So Ruth, I know you had mentioned earlier that the Westclox building itself was established in 1887?
1885.
1885.
Yes, I can show you the history. Here's a picture of the museum.
Wow.
Of the Westclox factory. 100 feet, 40 feet, 3 stories tall. And it stood about 1 block south of us right now. Because on this corner, this exact corner, was a general store, Brilski's General Store. And while the factory was being done, people worked in the back room of the general store putting clocks together until the factory opened. Let's show you something. You're going to be surprised.
And all the clocks here are so unique and
They're
beautiful.
all different.
Yeah.
Now, do you see this clock?
Yes.
Can you read the number on there?
Looks like
200 millionth
200 millionth.
clock.
200 millionth.
When
Oh my
this clock
goodness, I
was
cannot read
made,
today.
it was in 1948.
200 millionth.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
We might have done that sooner, but we were closed for making clocks during World War II. So that was... And then let's see what else we can show you. Let's see the people. Look at the picture behind here. This is about 1914. And all those ladies are working. There's the timing racks, and we took the time to keep them perfect. And all the ladies are working. You can see the clothing that they wore. 1914.
Sure. They're all wearing.
And look how
this, like,
clean it
dresses.
was.
Yes, absolutely
Spotless
pristine.
clean.
And they're all working with their hands. They don't
Yes,
look
they
like
are.
they have any machinery at all.
Well, other people would have machinery, but right
Okay.
there they didn't have. They were
Okay.
probably cleaning everything up and getting ready to be timed, and then they were packing them in a box. Of course, everything was done at the desk. And here's something. You see this fire truck?
Yes.
This is a little fire truck. But here's a picture of a fire truck.
Wow.
We made that truck here in 1929 because the company finally bought a Ford truck chassis, just the chassis. They brought it here, they took it to the maintenance department, and they started cutting it apart and putting it back together to turn it into a fire truck. And there it is. And it ran down every aisle of the factory, and if it had to go up, it would go in the freight elevator and go up and go into another floor.
Wow.
And it continued to run. When the factory closed in 1980, it still ran, and we'd use it. We don't know where it went because somebody sold it at an auction, we think in Rockford. We don't know where it went. But we now have 1 fireman left from that whole fire department. The fire department started in 1909. We have now 1 left.
Wow.
Now, there's a lot of clocks we made. We don't have one of everything. But if you turn to this back, you're going to see Big Ben. This is the Big Ben alarm clock. This came out in 1908, the first time it came out. Now, one of our volunteers has lined them up from there all the way, and now you're going to see how the Big Bens
How it differed,
changed, how they
yes.
changed. They were good clock, but they changed the design and everything. And I'll have to tell you, we don't have one of everything in here.
Okay. But you sure have a lot. And I
We have
don't.
a lot.
And you couldn't have one of everything
No.
because
Well,
you'd
they
probably
made-
fill up the entire Westclox.
Oh
building.
yes, they made so many clocks. Yeah, we would have 3 times this.
Do you have a ballpark number as to how many different clocks they made, different styles?
I don't have that number in my head right now at all.
But probably hundreds.
Oh, absolutely.
From
yes.
pocket watches to Big Bens to wrist
Yeah,
watches.
first they did Big Bens. Well, I should say that pocket watches came out in the late 1800s. So we started some of those. You'll see them when we get down. We got all of our 100-year-old clocks in a case. Now here's something that everybody like your age loves this stuff.
Oh yeah.
This
Very
is
fun
something
and colorful.
This is something we did in the early 1970s. It's called the lolly clocks. And lollyclocks because like this. It's on a stick like a lollipop.
Gotcha. Oh, and you can wind it.
Yeah.
That is so cool. May I?
Sure. But some of them had movements that could go on the wall. This one. I know that one is absolutely good because that was in my kitchen. So we made
Very
these
groovy.
in the early 1970s, and a lot of the sports teams, which you're going to find, are all different now.
Very
but they were
neat.
sold in the sports stores. So we kept them up for a while. And then we
A lot of different.
changed again.
Yeah. So these would, I feel like, would be considered more of like novelty items then.
Sort of, yeah. We had them right in the catalogs, and people knew what they wanted. So now, if you turn this way, you're going to see really strange stuff. You see, all these things are tools that most of the people have given to us. People have retired, and these are the tools that they used to make clocks.
Wow.
And it was wonderful.
And they look a lot different from the tools that we know and use today.
Yes, but they were wonderful.
They look like they could just be taken out and still used.
Yes, they could.
And that's how they made things back then to last.
They did. They did very well. Let's see what else we can show you. Oh, we have too many things. You're going to see something here. These are things were samples to show how the insides for this clock worked. And here's another one. Now you can see the inside of the Big Ben clock. What do you see over here? A lot of machines.
Yes.
Well, we only have 2 machines in here because they wouldn't fit in here. But we have one lathe, and it was owned, let's see, the person who started working here got its tool and die training here. We always had that done here. And then after he got that, he finally started his own company on Route 71. But he had this after we closed and bought it on auction. And then they brought it back to us after we opened the museum. We got another small lathe over here that was used by somebody and it brought back to us.
And you have even an apprentice training pamphlet too?
This is wonderful. This was brought in one day by a young man who said, I brought my great-grandfather's training class from here. And he was training up to be
That's
a
beautiful.
tool and die maker.
Wow.
Whoops. And they had
So
a lot of
these were
training they had to do.
his blueprints.
Well, sort of, yeah. But he had to learn how to draw all these things.
Oh my goodness.
And then when he got his tool and die class done, then he had to be about a 4-year apprentice. And then he got his tool and die certificate.
Wow.
And we had a lot of those. We had a lot of those. They were all trained right here. For instance, this toolbox came from a man that got out of high school and came here to work. And he worked here for 48 years as a tool and die maker.
And that was his toolbox.
That was his toolbox.
Very neat.
And over here we have a lot of tools that we've cleaned because they were in bad shape when we found them. These are all tools used by a Mr. Johnson, who was one of the model makers, an engineer. A model maker had to make a model of every clock that the company might want to sell. And he had to make from hand, by scratch. All tools, all the parts were made by hand.
Wow.
You put it together, took it to the board for them to check it, and if they said okay, then they started drawing up all the blueprints and sending them to the tool room, and then put them in the machines and start making them.
So you even made your own tools specifically
Absolutely.
for your products, the clocks.
Absolutely. Yes. Here's a lot of
Very
things.
specific and
Here's
intricate.
Here's a lead hammer that one of the tool makers made.
Wow.
And they would use it, you have to hit something with a softer hammer. And they had a thing hanging on their bench. We had melted lead. And if this got too worn out, they put it in there, let it melt. Then they put it in the mold, poured more lead in it, and started another hammer.
And it makes sense because, you know, back then, not like today, 2024, we've got all the tools that we could ever need for anything. So back then, I'm sure they were very limited on what types of small little tools that they might have needed.
Yes. Yes, they did.
Tell me a little bit about these pocket watches, Ruth, because I know you had mentioned that pocket watches were one of the first things that the Westclox made.
Well, not the first, but they were about in the middle. We made more pocket watches than you can imagine. We made them for other companies. They were made by us, but they had another name on them.
Really?
Oh, yes, we did that a lot of times. But they've got about 95 watches in this display that was given to us, so people love to come and look at them all. And of course, a lot of people look at the later clocks that we made after we were closed here, so they think we're done in Georgia. A lot of these things here were made in the plastic case.
Very cool.
And they were never very expensive. People thought they were terrible, but no, they weren't. We got pocket watches for everything.
Really? You got Smokey the Bear here?
Oh, sure.
See Hot Wheels? That is just so cool.
Those were done a little bit later. This was one of the World's Fair.
These pocket watches were very inclusive for everybody,
they were.
for all ages, for all different styles and likes.
A lot of men, when they were older, would hold out their pocket watch to show their son. This is what time it is. And then later, when the boy got a little bit older, he got one of those pocket watches too.
That is neat.
And here's some of the first pocket watches we made. Right here in the 1800s. You look at them, they're a little bit bigger and a little bit thicker.
Okay.
But we finally got it down perfect. And of course, everything in here is over 100 years old. And a lot of the cases here we did not make here. They were made by a place probably in Chicago, a casting place.
Okay.
Then we put the movement into the back of it.
Sure. And I see this one looks like it's got little angel cherubs
little
on
cherubs.
here.
Oh, cherubs.
Yeah.
At that time, and this is 1906, and those are very popular.
Gotcha. And what is the type of metal that it was made with?
Cast iron, but then it's rubbed with the gold.
With the gold and the bronze finish. Beautiful.
No, they're not bronze. They're all
Not bronze,
gold,
okay.
but they've aged a little bit. In fact, we have one down here.
And the aging is beautiful to
Oh,
it,
yeah.
you know, like the Lady Liberty. But patina, you want things, you know, collectors want things that looked aged. They don't necessarily want things to be all cleaned up.
Here you'd like, I should have had this open. In the back here, you see the large clock, the one that we bought. We bought that clock on eBay. And everybody said, oh my gosh, how much did it cost you? Well, it cost us $18. We knew what it was, but you couldn't read it. You could not read $14.92 on there.
Oh.
And it was rusty. And so my husband sat here and he cleaned it with his brushes, cleaned it up for several days. And our volunteer took the movement out of the back of the clock. He looked at it and went, give it a couple drops of oil. It still works perfectly.
Oh my goodness.
But we don't wind it up all the time.
Sure. But it goes to show.
That's from the Columbian Exposition in Chicago.
That is neat. And it says, it's St. Maria.
On the ship? Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of these things were, here's another cherub, see? Cherubs all the time.
A cherub with a violin. There are a bunch there too. 1902, you had the Imperial, and it looks like this was made out of, is that granite or marble?
It's granite.
Granite. Wow.
I don't know where it was made for. They probably wanted to have it at one of the places out east, you know. Because our clocks were sold around the world. And we had businesses, well, see, we had a factory here. We started a factory in 1920 in Canada. And then we had factory in, let's see, Mexico, Brazil, the Virgin Islands. We worked some in Germany. We had one in Australia. We had one in Hong Kong, and we opened one in Scotland. And we had opened one in Georgia State in early 1950s.
Wow, I had not known that. I thought that this was the building, this was the headquarters, and everything came out of here. Initially it did until you guys expanded.
Yeah. We had a lot of factories. And then, of course, the bad thing for us, we were taken over in the stock market, a very hostile takeover in the stock market in 1967. You cannot get a hostile takeover in the stock market anymore, thank God. But the people that took us over were Tally Industries, and all they wanted was money. And they came here, they went over to LaSalle National Bank, where we kept our money, and they withdrew $25 million. And they said, it just paid for the stock we bought. We got 51%. Didn't cost us anything. Then they did not want to pay our wages. We had 2 labor unions here. And if you're not getting rid of those labor unions, I'm going to start a new factory in Alabama. Well, we're not getting rid of the labor unions, so they started the factory in Alabama. In a few years, the people in Alabama said, well, we want to get paid where they get paid in Illinois.
Oh, sure.
So they started a labor union. He locked the factory on midnight the same day. He said, now you can all go over to Georgia, because there's no unions in Georgia.
Okay.
So they went over there. And that was fine. And then we were changed to all military products here. And then he came to see us in 1980, February 1980. And he said, we're not getting a contract anymore from the government. Now, there were a few people here that I knew who they were, and they were excellent. And they said, something's wrong, what they didn't make the paper out right or something. So they said, okay, what do we do next? Well, we're just closing the place.
That's unfortunate.
So we were closed in 1980.
It all took a turn back in the late 60s.
After we were closed, the first thing we were is inspected by the Atomic Energy Commission. Every square inch of this factory was inspected. We got a 100% clean slate. There's still a lot of people that think radium paint was used here, but it was never painted here. It was painted in Ottawa.
In Ottawa, because I know
Our
there was
clocks were done with
rumors
radium, but we had the contract, sent the things to Ottawa, they painted them. When the paint was dry, it came back here, we put them together.
Okay, so there was no form of radium exposure to anybody here in this building.
That's right. We got clean slate.
Very high safety standards
And
here.
so in 1981, everything was sold by auction.
And what you have here is what you have now.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
And you have a wonderful display here, and what a time to be alive here. It's very historic, and thank you so much for the history lesson.
Maybe you'd like to come back again.
I
We have a lot
absolutely
more to show
would.
you.
Yeah.
All the TikTok magazines. And
We were just scratching the surface. Well, Ruth, thank you so
I hope
much
to
for
see you
your
again
time
soon.
today.
Okay.
Absolutely, I will come back in.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.